Okay, members. Members, time to move on to questions to the Minister of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs. Questions 7 and 9 have been withdrawn, and I call Stewart Dickson. Mr. Dickson.
Number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Sir.
All animals moving through the Larne port are currently conducted by a veterinary-led portal inspection team. In relation to imports, all farmed livestock are unloaded at approved facilities where a detailed veterinary health and welfare assessment is completed before any onward travel is permitted. For other species, the same general rules apply to welfare checks. However, those animals are generally inspected on the vehicle and unloaded only if a welfare problem is suspected. In addition, documentary checks are completed as part of the overall welfare assessment to ensure that the vehicle is approved and fit for purpose, the attendants are competent and the journey is in line with the legislative parameters. Those animals moving to Great Britain through Larne Port, a general welfare assessment is conducted in all consignments to ensure compliance with the relevant welfare legislation before onward travel is permitted. These checks are in addition to similar checks completed by the certifying official veterinarian at the premises of origin. For dogs, an assessment is made of the animal's fitness to travel, plus the conditions of travel only where it is a commercial transaction or there are more than 5 animals being transported. The same documentary checks relating to the transporter and the vehicle, as for livestock, also apply to the transport of dogs. Should any adverse findings be disclosed during welfare inspections, all affected animals will be detained and treated in accordance with the nature of the findings. An associated range of enforcement measures are also available to department officials, including formal notices, a penalty-based system for transport authorisation, disqualification and potential prosecution.
Supplementary, Stewart Dickson.
Thank you, Minister, for your answer. Minister, you'll be aware that you halted an application for an equine facility and other commercial transportation of animals at Redlands Road in Larne. So can you assure the House, A, that with the additional inspections that are required, that the appropriate levels of animal welfare are being maintained, and when, Minister, will you agree to allow the expansion of the current equine and animal facilities at Redland Road in Larne as per the planning application?
Well, were there to be welfare issues, my veterinarians would be obliged to draw them to my attention. These are people who specialise in animal welfare, and they haven't done that. So if they have those issues, I'm sure that they'll draw it to my attention.
Call Roy Beggs.
Mr. Speaker, Uri lambs have been stranded, had been stranded in Scotland, and there have been restrictions to movements to agricultural shows, and there's been much talk of easing and removal of these restrictions. So can the Minister advise us what have been the numbers of live animals that have been coming into Northern Ireland from GB and going to Northern Ireland from GB, and when will all the new regulations be actually printed so we understand what is being proposed in the future?
Well, just to clarify with the member that livestock checks have always been taking place at the Port of Larne for at least around 20 years now, certainly since foot and mouth outbreak. And that has been something to ensure the animal health status, the very fine animal health status that we have here is maintained. So that should not be confused. A lot of those checks should not be confused with the Northern Ireland Protocol and the impact of that. However, the European Union has made it incredibly difficult for people who are showing livestock in Great Britain, and that has been hugely damaging to the pedigree sector and indeed for the important importation of lambs coming generally around this time of year from Scotland, which augment our hill farms in particular. And there has been considerable work that's been done through veterinary officials to deal with all of these issues. I believe that my veterinary officials have proved to the European Union, beyond all reasonable doubt, that this causes no danger, no impact, no harm to the European Union single market, and therefore any potential delays at this stage are political delays.
I call Philip McQuiggan.
And Minister, just following on from the two previous questions, and again in the interest of animal welfare, can the Minister confirm if he has enough veterinary staff within the department to carry out the checks at Larne?
Yes, we have. Now, in terms of transferring veterinary staff to carry out checks on groupage, for example, that is coming in where a lorry is carrying maybe 300 different food items, which is to be used in a store such as Sainsbury's, which doesn't have a base in the Republic of Ireland. That would be an illogical thing to do, yet it's being requested of us. And if the member believes it would be a good use of a veterinarian's time to be checking such goods, which again pose no threat whatsoever to the European Union single market, as opposed to be dealing with issues around bovine TB, about Johne's disease, about many of the other issues that are looked after by department vets, then he should stand up and say that. I personally don't think it is a good use of a veterinarian's time.
Paul Matthew O'Toole.
Speaker, would the Minister agree with me and indeed confirm, as he did earlier on, that there's always been checks at the Port of Larne and at the Irish Sea in terms of animal health, and if some people got their way and we put a border in terms of sanitary and phytosanitary goods on the island of Ireland, that farmers in this space would be faced with two sets of checks, one on moving goods onto the island of Ireland, and two, moving them from Northern Ireland into the Republic. So clearly we all want to see checks minimised, but given that checks have already existed at seaports, doesn't it make sense to minimise them and consolidate them in one location?
Well, certainly the checks that take place in terms of live animals, there has always been an element, a considerable element of that has taken place. And I have always indicated that I am happy to assist the European Union in ensuring that goods that may have the potential risk of entering the Republic of Ireland, that we would carry out those checks on their behalf. I think that they should pay for it, mind you, because it's preventing goods entering European Union through Ireland. It shouldn't be coming from our purse. But nonetheless, us doing that, that doesn't have to be done at Newry, it doesn't have to be done at the Fermanagh border. It can be done elsewhere. It doesn't necessarily have to be done at the ports either, but we can do that. But that should be separated out from the goods that are remaining in Northern Ireland, and there should be no internal barriers between Great Britain and Northern Ireland in that circumstance.
I call Cathal Boylan.
Mr. Verdeau, let a hold question number 2, please.
I'm committed to raising the issue of fairness for all farmers in the marketplace. However, the price farmers receive for their produce and others pay at any point in the food supply chain is a commercial matter and therefore not within my remit. I am pleased that Northern Ireland dairy processors, farmers and stakeholders had the opportunity to make their views heard on how contracts are used within the sector through the 2020 UK-wide consultation on contractual arrangements in the dairy sector. The aim is to promote transparency and to improve the position of the primary producer in the dairy supply chain. Consultation was led by DEFRA, as the regulation of anti-competitive practices, including the regulation of contractual relationships, is a reserved matter under Schedule 3, paragraph 26 of the Northern Ireland Act 1998. My officials will continue to work with DEFRA to further explore the Northern Ireland specific issues and to ensure that any UK legislation in this area would be appropriate for the Northern Ireland sector. Regarding information on prices, my department is currently consulting to seek views on the possible introduction of mandatory sheep carcass classification and price reporting in Northern Ireland to improve fairness and price transparency in that sector. Carcass classification and price reporting is already mandatory in Northern Ireland for bovine and pig carcasses. I am pleased to have recently published the Future Agricultural Policy Framework Portfolio for Northern Ireland, which sets out a framework for future policy around 4 key outcomes developed following engagement with stakeholders, which includes productivity, environmental sustainability, improved resilience, as well as an effective functioning supply chain. I intend to bring forward a public consultation on proposals for future agriculture support measures shortly. I look forward to engaging with all those in the industry as we move forward in developing better and improved support measures in the agri-food sector.
Cathal Boylan, supplementary.
Armagh, could I thank the Minister? Minister, it is crucial that there is transparency and fairness in the supply chain so that farmers receive a fair price for the food they produce. Would the Minister agree that ensuring that farmers receive a fair price reflecting the cost of producing food in the context of necessary welfare and environmental standards, this needs to be at the core of a future food strategy?
Well, in my opinion, the best way of achieving the best prices for food is to have the best food available. Northern Ireland has amongst the best quality food anywhere in the world, and therefore its prices should be at the leading edge. So I think we should be doing everything that we can to ensure that animal health, animal welfare, food traceability, food provenance, environment, and all of those factors, as well as quality, are right at the top end in everything that we do. And therefore, when it comes to facing perhaps commodity food being imported at a lower price, that then we are able to demonstrate to the buyers and indeed to the consumers that Northern Ireland food is the best that they can get, and therefore it is worth paying a bit extra for.
Calls Deborah Ruskin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister will know that I'm very fond of the local produce that I eat, and I'm sure he is too. But Minister, do you feel that the Northern Ireland produce is marketed in a way which educates consumers as to the benefits of buying local, home-grown food and our high standards, highlighting the need to our farmers to receive a fair price? For example, given the issues facing the pig sector, what discussions have you had from representatives from that sector?
We've had a series of discussions with the pig sector, which is going through a pretty difficult period at this moment in time. And in particular, it was raised with me last week that one particular processor had made a cut which many of the farmers felt was excessive. And I haven't seen a clear demonstration of what the justification for in that cut of pig price was, other than there is perhaps a bit of an oversupply situation, but nonetheless there is considerable demand for the product right across the UK and beyond. So it is important that if you want to have long-term relationships with suppliers, you treat those suppliers well, and I would encourage all of the processors to do that, to develop those long-term relationships and ensure that the suppliers that are providing them with the product are in a profitable circumstance. Because very often you hear people talk about fair price farming, and they're thinking about third world countries and so forth. But for me, fair price farming should apply right across the board, and that farmers in this part of the world should be receiving a fair price for their products as well, because many of them will be in very difficult financial circumstances. Many of them are having their income augmented and subsidised through the various income support measures, and people should reflect upon that.
Just carrying on the theme of the pig farmers, of course it's a commercial matter, but does the Minister deprecate the action of the primary processor for many of our pig producers in arbitrarily reducing the price they were prepared to pay per pig by a colossal £13.50 per pig, on the basis that if they accepted all a farmer's pigs, they would only pay the reduced price? Does that not seem an occasion of exploitation of farmers, which is not something which is in the long-term interests of the industry?
Well, I don't think it's in the long-term interest of the industry. I think it's important that both producers and processors have that sound working relationship, that they may have a degree of competitiveness, but ultimately that there's a trust that exists there. And I feel that the sooner that is addressed, and indeed that cut of £13.50 is actually reduced considerably, the better. And that particular processor is importing a lot of pigs from the Republic of Ireland, and to have a problem with dealing with the numbers of pigs that are available in Northern Ireland, which isn't running into really large figures when you drill down to it, it is very unfortunate. And particularly when meal prices are high, the processors need to be cognizant of that and ensuring that they're not putting their suppliers into a really difficult financial position at this point.
I'll pass the microphone.
And just picking up on Mr. Alistair's point there, I did raise it along with Mr. Edwin, in fact, last week at the ERA Committee, where it appears to be a form of commercial blackmail, where, in fact, some of these producers are saying we'll take all of your pigs, or sorry, 80% of your pigs at full value, or all your pigs at knockdown of $13.50. Minister, can you tell me, is there any way, and I know it's commercial and all that, is there any way either you or any other public body can intervene in situations like this to ensure that people aren't being done down in such a manner?
Well, there's a number of interventions that could be made. One of them would be an on-farm cull. Personally, I don't think that would be a particularly positive thing, because UK is still importing, a net importer of pork products, and requires high volumes of pork products, and there's a demand there, and therefore to be slaughtering and rendering perfectly good food, which there's a demand for, it's not a route that I really want to go. Although I've also suggested that we could consider reducing the population of pigs right back to birth, and but again, the processors don't like that idea. But the issue at this moment in time is there are more pigs available than there is slaughter capacity, although it is we're talking on the margins as opposed to having many tens of thousands. So the numbers of pigs that are available to the plants and the capacity of the plants to actually slaughter those pigs could be picked up if there was more Saturday working and things like that there happening. And I trust that will be resolved in the not too distant future.
And I call Mervyn Storey.
Question number 3, Mr. Speaker.
My Department's Rural Hurl Refurbishment Scheme closed for applications 11th June 2021 with a total of 211 applications received. The first stage in the assessment process was to rank those applications according to the Northern Ireland Super Output Area, Access to Services domain, after which officials worked through the eligibility process for each application. When concluded, 114 applicant organisations were deemed eligible for the scheme, with 97 deemed ineligible. All ineligible applicants have been informed that their application has been unsuccessful, with reasons for this decision provided in their correspondence. The applications deemed eligible but not shortlisted due to funding constraints have also been advised of the outcome to their application. The scheme guidance stated that the number of projects anticipated to be funded would be 30. However, I secured funding to enable 50 eligible applications to be included in this pilot scheme. This will result in training and refurbishment funding of just under £2 million for a total of 50 voluntary and community organisations. An initial 30 organisations have completed their training, and as of today, 16 letters of offer to the value of £562,000 has been issued, with a further 14 to the value of £474,000 expected to issue next week. A further 20 organisations will commence their mandatory Managing Your Space training in early December and should receive their letters of offer in March 2022, with an estimated letter of offer value of £665,000. At this juncture, it is anticipated that the first 30 organisations will have the majority of their refurbishment works completed by the 31st of March 2022, and the additional 20 will be completed by September 2022.
Mervyn Storey, supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Minister for his answer and also for the interest that he has taken in this particular issue in regards to the establishment of the pilot scheme. And clearly from what he has said, there is a demand out there in the rural areas for such a scheme. However, could the Minister maybe outline what his plans are in terms of how this scheme will be progressed in the weeks ahead?
I thank the member for the question. And whenever you get out there and you see a lot of the halls, a lot of facilities, it is quite shocking how poor some of those facilities are, and therefore this funding, which can provide disabled access, or a kitchen which would meet normal health and safety standards, fire safety controls, or indeed just providing heating in some of these halls, which are still using coal fires and so forth, is something that is demonstrated to be absolutely necessary, because there has been a lot of small rural halls and small rural communities that have been left behind. So we have proceeded with the scheme for the 50 halls at this stage, and we're looking at seeing how we can further assist the 114 applications in total, which demonstrated that they could be funded and they should be funded, but we didn't have the financial capacity to do that. But we're looking at how that could be done, and we're looking at how this programme, given the demand for it, could be mainstreamed in the future.
Call Rosemary Barton.
Thank you, Minister, for your answers so far. Minister, a key element to the scheme was the requirement of 6 members of the community to participate in a mandatory Managing Your Space capacity building training programme. What evidence have you that this programme actually was successful in achieving capacity building?
Well, one of the things that we have been concerned about is that these halls, because we directed it towards halls that had never previously received funding, and one of the things that we wanted to do was, whenever they got this funding, that they would be in a better position to avail of public funding in the future, and therefore providing them with the necessary skills and support is something that we believe is important, and that is why the training was part of the programme. So this wouldn't just be a one-off, that whenever it came to other developments that could be carried out for the benefit of that rural community, that they would be better placed to do that. And that's why we carried out the training. It is probably too early at this point to ascertain the success of it, but nonetheless we think it was very important that was carried out.
Nicola Brogan.
And I thank the Minister for his answers so far as well. Pardon me. Minister, I'm sure you'll agree with me that whether it's down to COVID or Brexit, that many of our rural communities are facing huge challenges at the moment, and these difficulties to face need to be addressed within the rural policy framework if it's to make any great difference. So while the Rural Hall Scheme is a good initiative, can you tell me if you're considering any rural business and community investment programmes as part of the framework, please?
Well, DAERA have been leading on the rural communities and have a number of projects which are providing real and significant benefit to the rural community. So through TRIPSI, we have engaged a whole series of schemes. So, for example, we have pilots on a website development programme, a Rural Tourism Collaborative Experience Programme, Rural Micro-Business Growth Stream, Rural Social Economy Investment Scheme, Micro-Business Investment Scheme, Rural Community Pollinator Garden Scheme, and then there's a whole series of others established programmes. These are all pilot schemes, but they're innovative schemes which are set out there to target rural needs, to drive up the numbers of visitors that come to rural communities, and to ensure that those small rural businesses that are never going to be tapping into Invest NI funding can get those modest grants, 20 to 50,000 in the main, that can make a real substantial difference to the viability of their business.
Nicole John Blair.
Mr Speaker, with the emphasis now, Mr Speaker, on rural investment, can I ask the Minister for an update on another rural development initiative from his department, namely the Rural Tourism Collaborative Experiences Programme?
The aim of that programme is to bring small numbers of businesses, clusters of rural businesses and other partners to work closely together to develop a range of products, experiences, which can be promoted either individually or as combined experience. So those clusters where people are operating in the same fields, so people who perhaps are producing food, artisan foods, linking them up to the provider of the raw materials, and further linking them to markets for those products. Those are the types of things that we wish to encourage.
I call Mark Durkan.
Question number 4.
The Executive Office, through the COVID-19 Recovery Plan, has assessed the needs of all dwellers, both urban and rural, as a result of the pandemic. These needs are reflected in the ongoing rollout of the COVID-19 Recovery Action Plan. My department is contributing to a number of actions documented in the plan that are targeted at rural dwellers and businesses, such as the COVID-19 Recovery Revitalisation Scheme and Tourism Recovery Plan. In addition, a number of rural stakeholders, when responding to public consultation of the Rural Policy Framework, expressed concerns regarding COVID-19 recovery, and these will be addressed through the framework going forward. At the outset of the COVID-19 pandemic, I met with agricultural industry representatives and stakeholder organisations to assess the impact it may have on them. After examining the nature and extent of the financial losses that has been incurred, there was a strong economic rationale for providing financial assistance to agriculture and horticulture businesses. Financial assistance would be targeted at those farm businesses hardest hit financially and enable them to deal with short-term market disruptions that would substantially impact on otherwise viable business. My department secured £41.7 million in 2020-2021 year from the Executive for a range of COVID-19 support measures, including £25 million for market intervention in the local dairy, beef, sheep, potato, pig, poultry, wool and ornamental horticulture sectors, which is the most comprehensive allocation made by any UK or EU administration during the coronavirus emergency. In the current year, my department has secured £21 million and is using this to provide support in rural areas affected by the COVID pandemic. An equality and human rights screening exercise was completed and the policy was screened. The completed EQIA screening document is available on the DAERA website. A rural needs impact assessment has also been completed.
Mark Durkan, supplementary.
And I thank the Minister for his answer. That COVID-19 has brought with it a plethora of problems, and many of those have been felt even more acutely in our rural communities than elsewhere. Could the Minister detail any particular work that is ongoing between his department and that of the Department for Communities in terms of assisting rural communities who often fall between two stools when it comes to being able to draw down public funding to run community projects, tackle isolation and many of the other problems that the Minister has alluded to?
Well, during the COVID outbreak, the Department for Communities, under its interim minister, previous minister, Cathal Boylan and I, brought together a scheme which supported both urban and rural small businesses, high street businesses, and that ensured that we were able to give fairly significant support to those businesses. So many of them were able to buy equipment which enabled them to maybe change how they were doing things during COVID, and that was something which was also considered support. I should say that we also worked closely with DFI when it came to the scheme to provide rural transportation, and we used that rural transport scheme to provide food for people and medicines for elderly people who couldn't get out. So as opposed to taking people to the town or village to get their goods, we brought that to them. So there has been good cross-departmental collaboration to assist people in rural communities.
Gemma Dolan for a brief question and a brief response from the Minister, please.
Minister, given the soaring costs of inputs such as food and fertiliser, would you agree that your party's insistence on ending the areas of natural constraint payment was short-sighted and wrong? It has greatly increased the pressure on many farmers, and surely you can now accept that it would have been much better to retain this payment in order to provide proper long-term targeted support for our hill farmers?
Well, in terms of that, the price of fertiliser is the same for every farmer, just isn't for farmers who live in ANC areas. And of course, farmers in ANC areas got significant uplifts in terms of its funding through the way that single farm payment is now distributed. And consequently, if we were to have kept the ANC as well, then that would have meant removing payments from a significant number of other farming families who have actually demonstrated through the figures that they receive each year would have lower incomes than the farmers that are being referred to. So a party which speaks a lot about fairness, justice, equality, perhaps might want to apply it when it comes to this particular issue.
That ends the period for list of questions, members, and we now move on to 15 minutes of topical questions, and I call Stewart Dickson.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, in respect of the marine construction licence, discharge, consent and abstraction licence for Islandmagee gas storage, can you confirm that you were aware of the recommendations of your department's ornithologists, whose response to concerns raised by environmental NGOs in respect of the adequacy of the environmental assets were set out on the 3rd of August 2020?
Minister.
I was provided with a considerable amount of information by my officials on this particular issue, and I was provided with their views on it and whether it was capable of safely doing this in terms of the environment or not. And I'm very clear that I followed the recommendations and advice that was provided to me by my officials.
Supplementary, Stewart Dickson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Minister. Minister, as you've indicated to the House that you were aware that your own experts raised concerns about the adequacy of the assessment, why did you and your department fail to act on those recommendations by not requiring further information or indeed by refusing the application?
Well, I can understand that the member may wish to unpick the process that has taken place, and I have no doubt that others will seek to unpick it in another forum, and that is something which they're entitled to do. So I followed the advice that was given to me in terms of this issue, and therefore, if people wish to take that to another forum, then that is a matter for individuals or organisations to do that. But I believe that whichever decision that we would have made would have been challenged by one or t'other, and we have made the decision that we made on the basis of the best information that was available to us at the time.
I call Tommy Cannon.
Speaker, Minister, can you give your assessment of the independent report conducted by KPGM exploring the impact the private members' bill on climate change would have on areas across, especially my constituency of West Tyrone, which is a large rural farming constituency?
Well, the KPMG report was an independent report which was carried out, and it recognised that the impact would be greater in Fermanagh and Omagh council areas, Mid-Ulster and the Newry, Mourne and Down areas, which accounts for some 43% of Northern Ireland's land farms, which are located in less favoured areas. And we have just received a question from somebody regarding ANC areas not very long ago. The ANC areas are the areas which are going to be most impacted as a consequence of our actions in dealing with the climate change issues, because the ANC areas happen to have more peatlands, and it's very evident, all of the information that we're receiving is information about restoring peatlands, about removing peatlands from permanent pasture, and consequently that will lead to a circumstance where many farms in the constituency that you represent being brought under pressure to actually not actively farm, and that is going to be a very significant debate going forward.
Supplementary, Tommy Cannon.
Thank you, and thank the Minister for his response. What advice then would you give to farmers in Fermanagh, West Tyrone, other areas of similar land who fear for the future viability of their business going forward?
Well, I suppose the advice that I would give is more to this House. I would like this House to ensure that it takes everything into account before they make decisions, including the fact that they could drive many small family farms out of business. And that may be an easy decision to make for a member from South Belfast or a city constituency. But members who represent rural constituencies should be very cautious, very, very cautious about ensuring that people who live in their community can no longer engage in a business which has been transferred to them for many generations and taking something away from them that nobody else could have. This House has the ability to do that, which nobody else has ever done in the past.
Paul Kelly-Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, in advance of International Day for People with Disabilities, what engagement have you had with stakeholders such as guide dogs and Northern Ireland assistant dogs on the dreadful issue that's rising on dog theft?
Well, certainly we want to work closely with the Department for Justice, particularly in providing an animal register and the register of offenders and so forth. We have different kinds of people who keep dogs, and there's those who love and adore their dogs, and thankfully that's the vast majority of people. And there's those who see dogs as a commodity and something that they can profiteer from. And I think that each and every one of us who have a responsibility on this, and my department has a significant responsibility, need to be identifying how best they can make it difficult for those people and do what we can to ensure that they haven't got that ability to profiteer from something which the rest of us regard as one of our family in most instances.
Kelly-Armstrong, supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Minister. Minister, as we know, it's the run-up to Christmas, and there's the unfortunate instance that happens every year where people get puppies for Christmas. Will there be a public engagement campaign in the run-up to Christmas or just after to make the public aware of the issue of pet theft to ensure that they know exactly what steps to take should it happen to their family?
Yes, we helped launch the Pause for Thought campaign last week, and that's more focused on people's acquisition of dogs. And you know, the shelter that I was up had 9 pups in there, which all had pneumonia. And you know, we're holding those wee pups, and you can still hear it in their chest even after having substantial treatment. And you know, there's just so much opportunism out there with dogs. Dog theft is a big thing. People need to ensure that their dogs are kept in secure areas, and that you know, when they're out and about, that they have their dog under control, so that it doesn't run off and get lost, and give that opportunity for somebody else to steal it. But I do know that there are people who go around the countryside, in particular, stealing dogs, and particularly younger pups, which have very, very valuable in today's markets, are something which is easy pickings for thieves, and people need to be aware of it.
Minister, our farmers are facing an uncertain future. Brexit, COVID, labour shortages, spiralling costs, climate change and detrimental trade deals are all impacting on the viability of farms across the north. I know the farms in my constituency are on the brink, and they're only surviving on the single farm payment. Given the unprecedented challenges that our farmers now face, partly as a result of the Brexit that you championed, has your department begun an impact assessment to explore the potential damage to farming businesses in each constituency at the end of the single farm payment?
Well, I suppose if we look at the prices farmers are receiving, both for milk and for meat and for lamb and for cereals, all of those products are up. Pig sector is down, and the chicken sector has proven to be very stable. So actually, since Brexit, all of those prices have went upwards. So I'd have thought that would be something that the member would actually welcome.
Supplementary, Gemma Dolan.
And thank you, Minister, but I'm sure there's many struggling farmers who wouldn't agree with you. Would the Minister agree that the British Government cannot be trusted with food security, as it scrambles for trade deals in a race to the bottom, where food and environmental standards are secondary considerations?
Yeah, well, you know, we have a circumstance, and we certainly did have it in Europe, where the horse meat was being moved around, you know, all of Europe, and that's not something which is traditionally used in UK, United Kingdom. So the member may wish to reflect on some of those people who should prefer to be with in terms of that element of food security. I think for the UK government, food security will become ever more important. And I know that some people have in the past foolishly advised that the UK doesn't need to have farms. But COVID was a very clear demonstration of the importance of having a commodity such as food close to home. I also believe energy security is critically important. And you look at the circumstance today, we have energy being switched on and off as it suits particular governments and the prices that people are paying. So I think that our farms have a significant future ahead of them. Should we let them and should we work with them as opposed to imposing things upon them which is going to decimate farms? And I trust that your party will be wise when it comes to this and will take the right decision as they fully understand all of the implications of taking the wrong decision, and that we have vibrant farms which can supply both food and energy to the people that live in this country and also export it.
I call Patsy McGlone.
Could I ask the Minister just what's being done currently to speed up the consultation process between planning and NIEA?
I've been having meetings on that issue, and I've asked for further staff to be put to that particular area of work. There is clearly a problem, and I would trust that not just our department but other departments would look at that as well to ensure that we have a system which is fit for purpose.
Thanks for that, Minister, and I appreciate the work that you're doing to try and resolve those issues. I'm trying to establish, is there a particular issue at the Natural Environment Unit within NIEA in terms of slowness of process? And I do have one particular case with the Minister's office at the moment.
Particular issue, and I'll not run away from it, and the particular issue is around staffing. We don't have enough of them. So I've asked for a paper to be submitted to me in order that we can go out and get more staff into that area and ensure that decisions can be turned around in a proportionate way. At this moment in time, our staff are under a lot of pressure, and as a result, we aren't taking calls to inquire about where the process is at the minute, because it was causing considerable delays just dealing with that. And it's better that the staff are actually focused on getting them out the door. I should say that in terms of longevity, the length of time waiting, that the Department for Infrastructure has some longer waiting times than NED, and perhaps the member could address some attention to that issue as well, and together we can improve the process.
William Mervyn.
Can I ask the Minister his view on the Conacre System in Northern Ireland and the potential to review the current tax system to encourage generation of renewable and greater land mobility?
Yeah, the Conacre System is something that we've had for many years. We have written to George Eustace. We've looked at what's happening in the south of Ireland. We're asking Her Majesty's Treasury to ensure that people who could take land on lease and invest in that land by putting on new gates and fencing and providing key pieces of work, providing lime, which will reduce the amount of carbon that land produces, that if they make that investment, that they get the tax relief on it. And I think that would be a significant step forward.
Supplementary, William Mervyn.
I thank the Minister for his response. The Minister would accept there's other regions of the UK and indeed the Republic of Ireland where different systems are in place and work very well.
And that's why we have followed this up. We've been speaking to various agencies on this issue, and we recognise that there is an opportunity to create an efficiency, a benefit for the land and a benefit for the people who are actually renting that land, that they can do it in a way which will help them make long-term investments as opposed to having that uncertainty of year-on-year rental, where they could lose it and therefore they don't make the investment in it.
I call Stephen Dunn.
Can I thank the Minister for recently visiting McKee's farm shop in Craigantlet alongside me and his support for local business? Would the Minister agree with me that more needs to be done to promote Northern Ireland produce right across the UK and indeed the world?
Absolutely, and we are working with Department for Economy on these issues. We see that there is tremendous opportunities to market Northern Ireland's produce. We do have exceptional produce, and that's why it's in companies like Fortnum and Mason and some of the other finest sales companies anywhere in the world who are selling fine quality foods. That much of that food can come from Northern Ireland businesses.
And members, time is up. Members, please take your ease for a moment or two.